Hello, my name's Lucy and I'm one of the Life Kids leaders at our Walls End site, leading the 1's to 5's there. And so I'm here today to continue our series looking at the fruit of the Spirit. So we've looked at love, joy, peace, I did that one last week, and this week we're looking at patience. So what Bible story could we have about patience? Well, let's look in our box and find out. What's in the box? What's in the box? What's in the box today? Let's find out. Whoa, I've fallen out of my box, these things. Okay, in my box I have a clock. Oh, that's the wrong bit. Right, a clock there. I have some prison bars. I wonder if you can guess the story as we go along. I have a sort of rainbow bit of clothing. Pretend it's a rainbow coat and you might guess what the story is. I have a bottle of juice. And I have lots of people. Now let's count them out and that might give us clues to our story. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 people. Have you guessed the story yet? Well, I'll let you know. It is the story of Joseph. Now, we're not going to go really into it because we're going to be looking at it more on Sundays. But Joseph tells us a lot about patience. Now, just to clarify, what is patience? Well, patience is when we have to wait for something. So like when you have to wait to go out somewhere, or when you have to wait for your lunch or your dinner. That's patience. And sometimes patience is, we find it really hard and we might be grumpy or we might be sad when we're being patient. But the Bible tells us that God can help us be patient and to be joyful still when we're waiting and waiting and waiting. No matter how long we wait, God will help us be patient and wait a really long time. So, Joseph. Now, Joseph had 11 brothers. He was his dad's favourite. This is where the rainbow coat comes in. I wonder if any of you remember it. And his dad gave him a special rainbow coat to show that he was his favourite. And Joseph had lots of dreams. God spoke to him in dreams. And God gave him this dream of having his brothers bow down and worship him. That Joseph would be somehow better than them or different than them or more special than them. Now when Joseph told his brothers this dream, here he is, Joseph telling his brothers this dream, they were really cross and they didn't like this because they didn't want to be told that Joseph was better than them. So they sent Joseph away, and when they sent him away, he ended up in prison. Here's our prison bars. In a prison like this. And he had to wait an awfully long time in prison. He still remembered that dream and he still trusted that it was a dream from God and it might come true. But he waited and waited in prison. It wasn't very nice in prison. Until one day, somebody, a guy called Potiphar, brought him out of prison and said, I've got some jobs for you to do, Joseph, in my house. Hooray! Joseph thought, this is it. I'm done with the waiting and now I'm going to work in Potiphar's house. But it wasn't to be. Something went wrong and people accused him of doing something bad. And so Potiphar said, send him away, send him back to where he came from. Well, we know where he came from. It was prison. So back he went to prison. There he is, put up our prison bars. And he had to wait and wait and wait some more. And it probably was quite tricky waiting because God had given him a dream with his brothers and then he'd ended up in prison waiting. He thought he'd got a really great job and then he went back to prison waiting. And all the time he kept talking to God and knowing that God was with him and God helped him to be patient. All the while thinking of this dream that God had gave him. Well, he made a friend in prison and this friend had used to serve the king. Here's our king over here. He had used to pour wine for the king. This is where our juice comes in, you see. He'd used to pour wine for the king, and he was in prison, and he had a dream in prison. And he asked Joseph, well, Joseph, I know that God's given you a dream, and I know that you listen to God, so will you help me work out what this dream is? Joseph said, yeah, I will. So the wine pourer told Joseph his dream. Joseph interpreted it, and what ended up happening was he said, this dream means that you're going to go back and work for the king. And do you know what? Because God had spoken about this dream, of course it came true. So the wine pourer came out of prison and went to serve the king. Where should we put him? Put him there. Serving the king, pouring him wine. But whilst he was here, he forgot all about Joseph. Joseph was still in prison, and he was still waiting and waiting and waiting. And maybe he thought, I don't know what this dream's all about. This dream God gave me years ago. Here I am in prison. But he waited and he trusted in God until one day the king had a dream. Another dream. Everyone's having dreams. The king had a dream that God spoke to him about things that were going to happen. And he needed somebody to tell him what it meant, because it was all a bit confusing for him. And here, the wine pourer, he remembered and he said, I know a guy who can interpret dreams, Joseph. He's in prison. Let's go get him out of prison. He can help you. So finally, at last, they got Joseph out of prison, and he interpreted the king's dream. And do you know what? After all that waiting and waiting and waiting, he became second in command to the king, a bit like a prince, because he interpreted the dream right. And the king said, we need wisdom, and you've got lots of wisdom because you listen to God. And he put him second in command to him. Let's see if we can sit him on there, if he won't fall off. There we go, second in command. And you know what? After a few years later, what ended up happening, what had come to pass from the king's dream that God had spoken to him about, and what ended up happening was Joseph's brothers came back because they needed help. And Joseph was second in command to the king, and all his brothers came back to him and said, help, help. And so that is what happened when Joseph's dream came true. Joseph's dream that had happened years ago, and Joseph had to wait and wait and wait and wait, and it didn't come true in prison, and it didn't come true in Potiphar's house, and it didn't come true in prison the second time. Well, eventually it came to pass here. After all that time of waiting, Joseph had continued to trust in God and ask him, and continue talking to him and praying with him and trusting that it would come true, and it did, because God had spoken to him. So there's a little story about how God can help us to be patient. Now, Joseph was patient for years and years and years and years. Now, some of you that are watching this haven't been around for too many years on this earth, so that's quite tricky to think about. But I was thinking about, what does patience mean for me and you? And I was thinking, at the moment, it's quite hard to be patient, I think. I was thinking about what I'm waiting for, and I'm waiting for to be able to go to the beach. I'm waiting to be able to go to the park and to be able to go swimming with my little boy. Maybe you're waiting for those things too. Maybe you've ordered something, a toy or something outside, and you're waiting for it to come. There's lots of things that we can be waiting for. And I thought we'd just do a little chat and catch with God about patience. So, if you haven't done this before, what we're going to do is we're going to catch first. All that means is God speaks to us, and he speaks to us in the same place as when we imagine things. And he can speak to us in pictures, or he might say words to us, like a whisper in our ear. And so all we're going to do, all I want you to do now, is to ask God to tell you something that you're good at being patient for. And just take a little minute, we're just going to have a little pause. Ask God to tell you something you're really good at waiting for. So just have a listen, might help to close your eyes, have a listen. Did you catch anything? Did he whisper anything? Maybe you could tell you're grown up if you're watching with them. Okay, and now we're gonna chat to God. So I'm just going to pray, and you can just follow alongside of me. So Holy Spirit, please give us more of your patience, of God's patience that is so good and waits and waits and waits. Please help me with what I find hard to be waiting for. Please help me when I find it hard to wait for lunch or dinner, when I'm finding it hard to wait to be able to go out, or when I'm finding it hard to wait to see my friends, or I'm waiting to see my family. Please help us all, Holy Spirit, to be able to wait more patiently. Please give us your patience. And we're ready to do our big amen. Amen.